Hi everybody, welcome back. I know it's been a while. For those that don't know, I've been obviously working my normal 30 hours a week, and I've also now been studying at university full-time, or well, they say part-time, but it's still 30 hours of study a week. And I've now got a 5-month-old baby, so life's been busy and I haven't really found the time for YouTube. However, we're back now with a series that's a little bit close to my heart, really. First of all, spoiler alert, if you're playing through Final Fantasy XIV right now and you haven't finished the Shadowbringers campaign, then just listen to it in the background rather than watching the video. I don't want to spoil one of the final dungeons, but it just happened to be what I got hold of first when I was making the video. Anyway, so I'm linked with anxiety, as is many people. I myself have a form of autism, which means that things like playing games and taking on roles such as tanking or healing, where they're a demanding role, let's be honest, or you're expected to do or achieve a certain level of play, is quite difficult, and it triggers my anxiety, as it does with a lot of other people. And when speaking to my guild about this, or my FC, a lot of people say things like, just jump in and just do it. And I understand that it's not as simple as that. It's not as simple as, okay, I'm just going to pick a tank and go into a dungeon, because even a dungeon that you know and can be quite easy, take the first one, Sastasha or something, you're still, if you're anything like me, got this thing in the back of your mind of, well, if I make a mistake, it's my fault and I have let the party down, and it makes you feel bad about it. But the point is, we're supposed to enjoy these games. We're supposed to enjoy what we're doing and our time on the game. If you're anything like me and it's limited time as it is, the last thing you want to do is spend the whole of it worrying about what you should and shouldn't do and not doing what you enjoy. So I'm going to make this series where we're going to trigger my anxiety on purpose, and we're going to play through the dungeons as something that I would struggle with normally. So we're going with a healer, I think, to start with, and I might redo the series again as a tank, because tanking is something I would really love to do. Tanking is like the role that I would love to do as a main, but like I said, it triggers my anxiety hard. But I think what we'll do is we'll start with healer, because I think with my ranged DPS knowledge, my positioning will be a little better, and after that we'll go through with tanking. So that's the idea of this series. Basically, it's to show people that whether you suffer from healer anxiety or tanking anxiety, whatever it may be, we can push past that with limited experience of the dungeon or no experience of the dungeon, and hopefully get you to a level where you're not as anxious anymore and can actually enjoy the game a little bit. So first of all, there's a few things you want to do to make your life easier before you even start going into a dungeon, and that one of those first things is doing your UI, fixing your UI to how you think would benefit you. If you take a look at my UI, I'm currently on the dancer. As you can see, I'm not actually playing a healer right now, but I just wanted to use this footage to show you the positioning of my buttons and how I have everything laid out. And if you take a look at it, we've got in the center of the screen, just underneath the character, we've got the what I'd like to call like the proc buttons or cooldown buttons. So I don't actually push these buttons. They are there for show, so that I'm always looking around the center of the screen. Now, it's obvious really, but you want to be looking at the center of the screen at all times where your character is, and the reason for that is because in this game, as is with most MMOs, there's a lot of movement mechanics and a lot of things that go off underneath your feet. If you're not looking at the bottom of your character or around the center of the screen, you're never going to see if you've been targeted by these things or what's in your area around you. So what we do is always have our buttons and procs and things you want to keep aware of around the center of the screen, so that you're never got your eyes somewhere else when something lands on you. So we've got those proc buttons there literally so that at a glance I can see what cooldowns are coming off next, what abilities have proc. But you can see quite easily at a glance what cooldowns are off, when you want to use them, whether you want to save them, and it's right there. And to the left of that bar we've got my buffs. And again, similar reason, if I don't want to be looking in the top right hand corner of my screen every time I get a buff to see how long's on it or what it is or who gave it to me. at a glance it's right there and I can see it straight away, and if there's a symbol that I don't recognise, then I can always hover over it quickly to read what it is, and the tooltip will be in the centre of my screen and not right down the bottom corner or something like that. So again, it makes it easier for us to see. Debuffs are the same, but they're on the far right side of the proc bar, so to speak, just underneath the fan there. You can see that keeps up my dancer skills and the timer on my buff, and that's for the same reason. Again, we're looking at the center of the screen, we can see any debuffs we may have, and if anything we don't recognize or don't know what it is, we can just hover over it. And then we come to the skill bars down the bottom. If you look at the skill bars themselves, these happen to be separate. They're not on every class I play, they're not separate normally, but you can see that the right hand bar, the one that's a square shape, that's laid out how my MMO mouse is. So at a glance, if I need to use something and I just forget where it is because it's a skill I don't use very often, or it's an ability I don't use very often, it's laid out exactly how my thumbs in my brain would push the buttons. So I can quickly see, oh, I need to use my shell, I'll push F5, which is, you know, my center mouse button, and it's done. The bars themselves, I've laid it, it's weird how I've laid it out, but basically I've got my 1, 2, 3, 4 as my main attacks and my main procs from my main attacks, and then my shift versions are exactly the same things, but the AoE ones. In dungeons I end up holding shift way more because of that setup, because generally you AoE way more, but so it's not the best setup, but it is what I've got and it works for me. Then we've got the party bar, which is on the left, in the center screen on the left, and that is, again, when your eyes are always looking center, it's just so that you can flick slightly to the left and see how your party's doing. It could come over slightly more to the right, but I've been doing some alliance raids recently, or going through some alliance raids, and the buffs become so crazy that they cover so much of the screen. I pushed it back to the left. I would ideally like the buffs to go out the left side of the portrait, but I can't figure out how to do that. You probably can't even, so I haven't bothered. Then we've got the enemy bar on the right hand side. Now that's kind of out the way a little bit because I don't really have to click enemies that much. I tab target, I have conal tab targeting on, so generally in the direction I'm looking it tabs the closest and then the next one that's closest in my conal range, and therefore I don't need to click very often. But that's really good for if you're tanking, if you're choosing to tank or anything like that, because you can quickly target something that's running away or something you don't have aggro on without having to try and click it and fumble around doing that during combat. So that's a good position. And then at the top you'll see that I've got my giant health bar. Again, it's at the top because really I don't need to worry about the boss health so quickly, like or the mob's health a lot. You know, if I'm going to heal or I'm going to tank or I'm going to DPS, I'm more worried about doing my rotations and stuff properly. The boss and mobs and stuff will die when they die. It matters later on when you have % targets to hit and whether you're holding damage or so forth, and I might be tempted to move it then, but at this point it's not really important to me. And one of the final points, which you should see in a moment, is right in the center of the screen. I have a giant cast bar for the enemy. The reason I have a giant enemy cast bar is so that I can see when it's casting, simple as that. It's important that we know what the boss is casting and what those abilities do. And the one thing that is good for getting over anxiety is when you see something that he casts, you know what it does. So here we go, we've got the final sky. Now the first time he cast that, I recognised straight away what we need to do. We need to hide behind these blocks of rock here so that when the cast goes off, we're fine. So it's important that whenever we see Final Sky, we find a rock and we go and hug it. And if we didn't see him casting that ability, we'd have no idea that ability was going off if we wasn't paying attention to the animations or the cast bars or anything like that. I know that this breath is only for the tank to worry about. He used his cooldowns there it's a tank buster. And you can see that some of the abilities, like the earthquake there, that had a circle, target and circle around it, but not every boss in the game has a target and circle around it, and therefore you need to know what they're casting. And the best way to do that is slap a great big enemy cast bar in the middle of your screen. So that's basically it about my UI, I believe. I don't think there's anything else for me to mention here. Content will be coming soon. I'm going to try and heal through most dungeons, at least all the story dungeons. Obviously this is my first character on Final Fantasy XIV, the dancer. So now I want to get into healing, and I'm going to try and do some extremes and stuff that I haven't even looked at, haven't seen. I haven't done much in the game, only the story MSQs. So all the dungeons and stuff I've done so far are basically dungeons that you have to do. But I want people to see that although anxiety is a nightmare and it can really ruin the game for you, that you can still enjoy the game as long as you do the right thing. Also, remember, the Final Fantasy community is a lovely place. It really is a nice place. I've now played for 210 hours to finish the entire campaign, and I've met one bad egg in all that time. And you probably do about 50 dungeons and trials and stuff during the leveling process. So there is some out there, but they're very, very rare, and you mustn't worry about making mistakes and killing your party because you're not healing, or a tank pulling wrong, or him pulling wall to wall and you can't heal the damage and so forth. Please don't worry about that. The community is not a horrible place, and they will get your back. So please be at ease. You'll see I will talk about my struggles as we play. I will explain how I'm feeling and whether I'm worried or nervous and so forth, and show you that using mechanics and recognizing skills using the enemy cast bar, we will get through this. So that's what I want to talk about today. Anxiety is a serious thing. It is a common mental illness that isn't recognized enough, and hopefully this will start bringing some sort of help to players that struggle from it, no matter what role you're in. Hopefully you'll stick around for the series, and if you do, please like, comment and subscribe. Let me know how you feel about things, what you struggle with the most, and I'll see you all really soon. So thanks for stopping by. Bye bye.